If you think Hollywood is all about glitz, glamour, and million-dollar deals that always go right, think again. Even legends get screwed. And this time, it wasn't just some bad contract or a small-time scam. No, this was $12 million gone. Just like that. Sylvester Stallone, the man who built an empire with his fists, his sweat, and his unbreakable will, found himself staring at one of the biggest betrayals of his life. The kind of betrayal that would break most people. But here's the thing about Stallone. You don't bet against Rocky. Because when the dust settled, when the Sharks thought they had won, he turned it all around. This is the story of how Sylvester Stallone got screwed out of $12 million and how, against all odds, he came back swinging. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll see why Stallone isn't just a fighter on the screen. He's a fighter in real life. Oh, and if you love stories of underdogs, comebacks, and real-life Hollywood revenge, you might want to hit that subscribe button. Because this is just the beginning. Hollywood is a place where dreams come true and where fortunes disappear overnight. If you don't know how to play the game, you're finished. And even if you do, you're still not safe. Sylvester Stallone wasn't just another actor. He was a one-man empire. The guy had clawed his way to the top, from a broke, struggling nobody to a global icon. He wrote Rocky with nothing but determination and a dream, turned it into a billion-dollar franchise, and became the face of grit, resilience, and raw, unstoppable willpower. But in Hollywood, it doesn't matter how tough you are. If the wrong people smell blood, they'll come for you. And in the late 1990s, that's exactly what happened. This wasn't some random Hollywood scam artist running a shady backroom deal. This was high-level deception. Big names, big money, top-tier Hollywood sharks. And for them, Stallone was the perfect target. He had money, power, and, most importantly, trust. He wasn't some paranoid Wall Street guy watching every dollar. He was an artist, an actor, a guy who believed in opportunities and big ideas. And when you're worth hundreds of millions, 12 million doesn't seem like much. That's exactly what they were counting on. The setup was perfect. A high-profile investment. A sure thing. A deal that, on paper, was bulletproof. A brand new Hollywood studio. That was the pitch. A cutting-edge, state-of-the-art studio designed to compete with the biggest names in the business. A place where big-budget blockbusters would be made, where top directors would flock, where investors would see insane returns within just a few years. And Stallone? He wasn't just invited to invest. He was offered a stake, a founding partner, equity, ownership. This wasn't just about money. This was about legacy. And if there was one thing Stallone understood, it was legacy. He had built his own empire out of nothing. This was a chance to own a piece of Hollywood forever. And it all looked perfect. The investors, big names. The contracts, rock solid. The legal team, flawless. Everything checked out. And so, Stallone did what any smart businessman would do. He signed. He wired the money. $12 million. Gone in seconds. At first, everything looked fine. The studio was already in development. Land had been secured. Buildings were being planned. Big Hollywood players were on board. Stallone even attended a launch party where major producers, directors, and actors were shaking hands, talking about the future and smiling for the cameras. Everyone was excited. Everyone was talking about the future of Hollywood. Everyone except the guys running the deal. Because behind closed doors, something wasn't right. Deadlines started slipping. Budgets started shifting. Documents weren't adding up. Then came the phone calls. "Hey, Sly, we've hit a small roadblock. Just a minor legal issue. Nothing to worry about. We're working on it." At first, it seemed normal. Hollywood deals always hit snags. Big projects have delays, legal complications, and financing issues. Stallone wasn't worried. He had seen it all before. Until the emails stopped coming. The phone calls stopped getting returned. And one day, Stallone picked up the phone and called one of the big investors he had met at the launch party. And that's when he heard the words that made his blood run cold. What investment? Silence. The guy had no idea what Stallone was talking about. No contract, no shares, no deal, nothing. And that's when Stallone realized the truth. He had been played. This wasn't a delay. This wasn't a legal snag. This was a full-scale Hollywood con. A fake studio. A fake investment. A fake deal. $12 million. Gone. And the worst part? It wasn't some random scam artist. It was someone Stallone trusted. Someone who had stood beside him at premieres. Someone who had toasted champagne with him. Someone who had looked him in the eye while stealing his money. And that's when the rage kicked in. Because Stallone wasn't just some rich Hollywood star who would cut his losses and walk away. No, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Sylvester Stallone had just realized the ugly truth. He had been scammed. Not by some random street hustler. Not by some desperate con artist running a cheap Hollywood grift. No, this was a high-level con. A multi-million-dollar setup. And the worst part? It was done by someone he trusted. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was personal. Because for guys like Stallone, money comes and goes. But betrayal? That stays with you. And Stallone? He wasn't about to just let this slide. The first thing he did? He started digging. And the deeper he looked, the worse it got. Because this wasn't just a bad deal or a failed investment. This was a full-scale Hollywood con operation. And the guy behind it? He had done this before. Multiple times. Stallone's lawyers started pulling documents, tracking the money, and going through every inch of paperwork. What did they find? Oh, it was ugly. The man behind this? He wasn't just some shady businessman. He was a professional Hollywood scam artist. His entire career was built on fake deals, fake contracts, and fake partnerships. He would pull in big names, make them believe they were part of something huge, take their money, and then vanish. This guy had done it to producers, directors, and even other actors. But no one had ever gone after him. Because in Hollywood, people are too scared to look stupid. If you get scammed, you keep quiet. You move on. You don't want the industry to think you're dumb enough to get played. And that's exactly how this guy kept getting away with it. Because no one fought back. But Stallone? Oh, he was about to change that. Because there's one thing you don't do. You don't steal from Rocky Balboa. At this point, the scam artist thought he was safe. He had done this before. And usually, the victim just took the loss and walked away. But not this time. Because Stallone wasn't just an actor. He was a fighter. And when you back a fighter into a corner, he comes out swinging. First move? Stallone called his best lawyers. Not just any lawyers. The best. Hollywood sharks. The kind of guys who don't lose. The kind of guys who can smell blood in the water. And when they saw the contracts, they knew exactly what had happened. The entire deal was a setup from day one. The company that Stallone had invested in didn't exist. The bank accounts? Offshore. The business partners? Fake names. Every single piece of this was designed to look real, but wasn't. And the guy behind it? He had already started disappearing. Stallone had one shot at stopping him. So he took it. The next move? Find him. Stallone hired private investigators. Not just for the money, for the truth. Because he didn't just want his $12 million back. He wanted to destroy this guy. So the investigators started tracking every move. The scammer wasn't expecting this. He had run this play before. He knew how to cover his tracks. But Stallone's team? They weren't playing by Hollywood rules. They were playing to win. Within a few weeks, they had a lead. The scammer had gone quiet, but not quiet enough. He was hiding out in Europe, still making calls, still running scams, still thinking he was untouchable. So Stallone turned up the heat. The lawsuit hit first. A massive legal bombshell. Not just one lawsuit, multiple. Fraud, grand theft, breach of contract. And because of the scale of the fraud, federal investigators got involved. Now, this guy wasn't just dealing with Stallone. He was dealing with the government. His assets? Frozen. His accounts? Locked. His entire empire of scams? Falling apart overnight. Because Stallone wasn't just trying to win in court. He was trying to ruin this guy's entire life. And it was working. At first, the scammer thought he could settle. Make a deal. Pay off some of the money and make it all go away. He had done it before. He figured Stallone would take a deal. After all, it's just money, right? But Stallone? Oh, he didn't just want his money back. He wanted justice. And more importantly, he wanted revenge. So when did the settlement offer come? Stallone refused. The lawyers tried again. Another offer. Bigger this time. More money. Stallone refused again. Because for him, this wasn't about money anymore. It was about sending a message. And that message was simple. You don't screw over Stallone and walk away. The pressure was mounting. The scammer was running out of options. Every Hollywood executive was hearing the story. Every big investor was watching. And now, this guy wasn't just a scammer. He was a walking target. People he had scammed in the past were coming forward. Lawsuits started piling up. Journalists started digging into his history. And suddenly, this wasn't just a Stallone lawsuit. This was a full-blown Hollywood scandal. And for the scammer, there was nowhere left to hide. Because Stallone wasn't just getting his $12 million back. He was burning this guy's entire empire to the ground. The con man was running out of moves. At first, he thought he could wait it out. Maybe Stallone would get tired. Maybe the lawsuits would drag on. Maybe, just maybe, Hollywood would forget about this whole thing and move on to the next scandal. But here's what he didn't understand. Stallone wasn't just another actor. He was a fighter. And fighters? They don't quit. The lawsuits kept piling up. More and more victims came forward. The FBI was now involved. Journalists were circling. And the con man? He was suffocating. His accounts were frozen. His assets were seized. Every single dirty trick he had used to stay ahead of the game? Gone. Because this time, he hadn't scammed some rich investor or some Hollywood producer too embarrassed to fight back. He had scammed Sylvester Stallone. And now, he was paying for it. Then came the worst news of all. The lawyers weren't just after the money anymore. They were going for his freedom. Fraud, grand theft, money laundering. This wasn't just a civil case anymore. This was a criminal case. He was looking at serious prison time. And now, even his own legal team was telling him the truth. There was no way out. So he did the only thing he could. He made a call to Stallone. And for the first time since this all started, he was scared. The lawyers arranged a meeting. One final sit-down. The con man wanted a deal. A way to make this go away before things got worse. Before he ended up in prison. Before his life was over. So there they were, in a high-end law office in Beverly Hills. Stallone walked in, dressed sharp, calm, collected, dangerous. The con man, sweating bullets. Because the moment Stallone sat down, he knew there was no saving him. The con man tried to talk, tried to explain, tried to apologize. Stallone just stared at him, let him sweat, let him feel the weight of everything he had done. And then he spoke. And what he said, it crushed him. You think I'm here to make a deal? The con man froze. Stallone leaned in. His voice is low, controlled, deadly. I don't want your money. Silence. I don't want your apology. More silence. You're done. The con man's face turned pale. Because now, he understood. This wasn't about settlements anymore. This wasn't about fixing things. This was about ending him. The con man tried one last time. I can fix this. I can get you your money back. Stallone just smirked. You don't get it, do you? He leaned back, relaxed, in control. This isn't about the money. The con man's hand was shaking now. Because Stallone, he wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to erase him. From Hollywood, from business, from everything. And there was nothing he could do about it. The meeting ended. And the final nail was about to be hammered into the con man's coffin. Because Stallone had one last move. And this move, it would destroy him. Forever. The con man left the meeting a broken man. He had walked in thinking he could negotiate his way out. He had walked out knowing he was finished. Because Stallone didn't just want his money back. He wanted to make an example out of him. And that's exactly what he was about to do. The media was already circling. Journalists had gotten wind of the lawsuit. Industry insiders were talking. And Hollywood? Hollywood loved a good scandal. Especially one where a rich, powerful fraud got exposed. So Stallone, he did something brilliant. He let the story leak. Newspapers picked it up first. Then the entertainment sites. Then the financial world. And before the con man even knew what hit him, his face was everywhere. Hollywood con man exposed in $12 million scam. Stallone's fight against Hollywood's biggest fraud. From star-studded deals to complete ruin. His name was mud. His business? Dead. Investors pulled out. Clients stopped answering his calls. People he had once called friends? They were running for the hills. Because in Hollywood, Nobody wants to be next to a sinking ship. And Stallone? He wasn't done yet, because he had one last move. A move so cold, so perfect, that would make sure this guy never worked again. He announced a movie project. Not just any movie. A movie about a Hollywood scam artist. A charming con man who tricked his way into millions before getting destroyed by the wrong man. Sound familiar? It was a direct hit, and Hollywood ate it up. Stallone's next movie based on a real-life scandal? Is this a revenge film? The con man panicked, because now it wasn't just a lawsuit. It wasn't just a financial loss. It was his entire reputation being turned into a joke. And in Hollywood, that's the one thing you never recover from. He tried to fight back, tried to call in favors, tried to counter the press with his own story. But it was too late. Nobody wanted to hear from him, because by now, people weren't just talking about this one scam. They were digging up his past. Old deals, other victims, more lawsuits. And suddenly, he wasn't just a fraud. He was the most hated man in Hollywood. That's when the final blow landed. The FBI stepped in. The Financial Crimes Division had been watching, investigating, and when they saw how deep the fraud went, they moved fast. Indictments, arrests, federal charges. And the con man? He was out of time. He tried to flee, tried to disappear. But when you owe people that much money, when you've burned that many bridges, there's nowhere to run. And so, in the most pathetic, humiliating way possible, he surrendered, not to Stallone, to the law, because at this point, that was his only option left. Meanwhile, Stallone, he wasn't just winning. He was rewriting the rules. Because in Hollywood, there are sharks, and then there are legends. And Stallone, he had just proven which one he was. The moment the FBI got involved, everything changed. This wasn't just a Hollywood scandal anymore. Now, it was a federal case. And in America, when the feds come knocking, you don't talk your way out of it. The con man was out of moves, out of allies, out of time. And now, he was about to lose everything. The investigation moved fast. Because as it turned out, this wasn't his first scam. It wasn't even his biggest one. For years, he had been playing the same game, promising big returns, selling people on fake investments, pocketing millions. And somehow, he had always gotten away with it. But now, he had picked the wrong target. Because screwing over rich investors was one thing. But screwing over Sylvester Stallone? That was the biggest mistake of his life. The case made headlines. The trial was set. And the charges? Wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. It wasn't just about paying Stallone back anymore. Now, he was facing prison time, real time, the kind you don't walk away from. And for a guy who had lived his life in luxury, who had always believed he was untouchable, that was his worst nightmare. But here's the real kicker. The $12 million? Stallone had already won it back. Because while the feds were building their case, his legal team was still squeezing him dry. They tracked every stolen dollar, found every offshore account, recovered every last cent. And when it was all over, the con man wasn't just broke. He owed millions more in damages. Everything he had built? Gone. Everything he had stolen? Gone. Had everything he had left? It wasn't much. And soon, even that wouldn't matter anymore. Because when sentencing day came, the judge didn't hold back. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, industry insiders, even some of his former victims. And Stallone? He didn't even bother showing up. Because by this point, the fight was already won. He had made his point. He had sent his message. And now it was time for the final knockout punch. The sentence? 15 years in federal prison. No deals. No reduced time. No easy way out. The con man collapsed in his seat. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had always found a way to slip through the cracks. But not this time. Not against Stallone. Not when the whole world was watching. The headlines exploded. Hollywood scammer gets 15 years behind bars. Stallone's revenge. How the action star took down a con man. From high life to hard time. The fall of Hollywood's biggest fraud. The entertainment industry? They laughed. The financial world? Took notes. Because if there was one lesson to be learned from this, it was simple. You don't screw over Sylvester Stallone. Because when you do, he doesn't just take his money back. He takes everything. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that only comes when a man realizes his entire life is over. 15 years. That was the final verdict. 15 years in a federal prison, with no chance of slipping through the cracks. No more fake deals. No more million-dollar schemes. No more Hollywood parties. And no more easy money. The con man sat there, his face pale, his hands shaking. For the first time in his life, he was powerless. Because this time, he had no escape. But while he was staring down his fate, Stallone, he was already moving forward. Because for him, this was never just about revenge. It was about setting an example. It was about making sure no one in Hollywood or anywhere else would ever try this again. And guess what? It worked. The industry paid attention. Producers, executives, and big-time investors, they got the message loud and clear. Because before this, Stallone was just a movie legend. Now, he was something more. He was the guy you don't mess with. The guy who doesn't just win his fights, he finishes them. And the best part? He didn't even need to throw a punch. The con man disappeared from the headlines. No one talked about him anymore. No one cared. He was done. Wiped out. Erased. And when he finally got out of prison, if he ever did, he would be a nobody. No friends. No business. No power. Because in Hollywood, once you're a punchline, you're finished for good. Stallone? He walked away from this stronger than ever. His name? Bigger than before. His reputation? Untouchable. Because now, he wasn't just a guy who played Rocky Balboa. He was Rocky Balboa. In real life. A man who took the hit, stayed on his feet, and came back twice as strong. So what's the moral of the story? Simple. You can play games in Hollywood. You can make big moves. You can even take risks. But if you ever think about screwing over the wrong guy, make sure it's not Sylvester Stallone. Because he won't just get his money back. He'll take your entire world down with him.